What is up, everybody? My name is James D. Fiore, and this is Blackballed. Today we have a very special guest. She's returning to the show. Her bio is probably like nothing I've ever seen before. She's known for being a former NSA translator who was the recipient of the longest sentence ever for leaking classified documents. We'll get into that a little bit. She's also the subject of an HBO film that came out last year called Reality. She's an author of a new book that hopefully will be coming out a little bit later this year. And this is my favorite thing about her. I believe anyway, she's a bona fide hip hop head. Her name is Reality Winner. Reality, how you doing?
I'm good. Happy to be here again.
It's good to see you. I'm late to the party on the HBO movie. I'm in minute 57. I'm really kind of I can see myself in your shoes in the sense of I've been grilled by authorities before, and it is a very nerve-wracking process. Were you happy with the way that film? I mean, I haven't seen it. There's no spoilers because I know your story, but were you happy with the way that film turned out?
I haven't seen it.
Oh,
Um, yeah, so just to protect myself from the trauma, and just like all the other crazy things that happen when I guess you ingest too much media about yourself. I don't watch any of the finished products.
that's probably a good thing. You know, like the idea of having to relive like one of your darkest moments is probably not fun. It's funny that I remember from last time talking to you, you said something similar, and but you were kind of like okay with talking about your experience inside prisons because when you came out of that, you sort of became an advocate for prison reform.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I always say reform's an ugly word, but at the end of the day, we still have people going out and hurting people. So we need a way to kind of separate them. And, so I hate trying to explain it. And they're like, so you just said prison, right? But definitely eliminating all forms of detention for conduct that is nonviolent. Um, and that would in turn eliminate a lot of detention centers. It would be part of the abolitionist movement.
I don't understand, and this is like maybe I'm not a, it's because I'm not a capitalist, and we have it up here to a far lesser extent. But the whole for-profit prison idea, I don't know who created that. I don't know who created the idea that prisoners can like be telemarketers and build furniture for pennies on the dollar of what it would cost if they weren't prisoners. I don't know anything about that, but I find it heinous. I find it like really repulsive that this can happen. I don't know if you have any sense of history of how that happened or whatever, but is there a movement in the states to sort of make that like to reform the no, the idea that you can have a for-profit prison, or is that just the American capitalist way?
I mean, I can tell you that the people that set up that system also signed the Declaration of Independence, that the entire for profit prison system is just a replacement for slavery, going all the way back to, um,
Is that in the
you know,
Amendment 13? Is that part of that
the
amendment?
13th Amendment, Reconstruction, the chain gangs in the South, um, because you can't have the chain gangs anymore. You can't have the actual visual of the translation of inmates being detained for former slave work. It's the 21st century version of the telemarketers, of working for 8 cents an hour, of, it's even more insidious when you look at the profit and the capital that they gain off of products that inmates use, right? Like, just being there, you can be an inmate. You can wake up in the morning, get your three hot meals and stay in bed, and you still turned a profit for companies out there. It wasn't your labor, it was your body being inside that fence.
Oh
It's
wow.
become the most insidious form of capitalism imaginable. And that is why you don't have to hurt somebody to get locked up anymore. And that is why the recidivism rate is so high, because you don't have to commit a new crime. Once your name's in the system, you can just be a frequent flyer. It takes almost no effort to book you back into the system. and get you acclimated to the prison life again, and then continue that profit generation.
There's that famous case of the is it Robert Durst? No, sorry, I'm trying to Google it right now, but maybe you recall of that. I think he was like 16 or 17. He was accused of shoplifting and was couldn't afford bail, which was like $600 or something like that. And I think he either committed suicide or died while in prison. And they made a whole movie about it for Netflix. But that whole system, the bail system, like if you're not, I think you nailed it. I think if you're not in jail for a violent crime, the idea that commerce and cash can get you out of prison until your trial starts, instead of just getting this guy out of prison until the trial starts, like I think it would be less of an infringement of rights to be electronically monitored than it would be to have to stay in prison while you're waiting for bail.
Yeah, and so the child that was held at Rikers, I'm gonna mess up his first name, but I think it's Khalif Browder.
Yeah, that's it.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's just a terrible. Again, it's I try to apply reason to people. There's the people who say, um, if you don't want to do the time, don't do the crime, right? Because they like it because it rhymes and it's simple. Um, and I try to reason with them and say, how does his physical detention and removal solve the stolen backpack? You
Yeah.
know, if you want to take that even higher, Sam Bakeman Fried just got sentenced to 25 years for his little pyramid scheme, FTX, ripping off a bunch of people. Okay, so now the American taxpayer is going to pay but anywhere between $32,000 and $38,000 a year to house him.
Yeah.
How is that paying back the money to all the investors that he scammed?
Yeah, it seems like it has to be an infringement of somebody's rights, for just the whole system itself. Look, I'm in Canada. I spent, and we won't get into why, I spent 4 days in jail once, and all I did was just sit on my top bunk and read books. That's like, I didn't want to like, interact too much and fraternize too much. But then I realized that there's this strange, like when you're not in maximum security and you're not dealing with murderers and rapists and things like that, and you're just dealing with like whatever the mid-level to low-level criminal, there's almost a sense of camaraderie and community in there because we're all sort of in this together. There's a neat economy with when it comes to jails, when it comes to things like food and soap and toothpaste and things like that. Like it's an interesting ecosystem, but it's so controlled and so abusive in so many ways. Like when I hear people joke about people getting raped in prisons, especially when you hear jokes about men getting raped in prison. I don't hear too many jokes about women getting raped, but I know that that happens as well. I don't understand why the warden isn't immediately fined or put up on charges. Like, how is it that you're responsible to house all these people and someone gets raped on your watch? Why is that not some sort of offense or a crime? There's a question in there somewhere, but what your thoughts on that?
I mean, one of my friends, Carrie Blackinger, covers jails, but most importantly, the LA jail complex. And I mean, every week I see her on Instagram, her reels talking about another death in LA. And it was just like every single time she gets the documents of the staff's reaction to the medical emergencies and how they don't take it seriously. They had somebody who attempted suicide by asphyxiation and brought him back and put him in solitary confinement or on, supervised, what is it called? Suicide prevention, which is just solitary confinement with somebody watching you. And somebody gave him enough paper to asphyxiate himself again, and he died. Same exact way within 3 days of the incident. I mean, it's just at that point, like, are you that incompetent or do you do it for sport?
Do we have to sort of take another look at the prison system and remind ourselves that its intention is supposed to be to rehabilitate and not punish? Like the time itself is the punishment. Shouldn't their time that they utilize while in prison doing their time be used to make them better people? Like this seems like such a Captain Obvious question, but shouldn't that like where did we lose sight of that?
I don't think we ever had that vision. I think that from its inception, it was free labor. It was a place to throw people off the streets. Um, and then it became the tool to get voters off the streets. It became the tool to weaponize um, certain drugs and illicit substances against entire communities, to break up communities. And it's also a way to mess with the census. If you notice, like a lot of prisons are kind of in rural areas and rural counties, and it beefs up the population of these rural counties by 50, 60, 70% by moving people out of the inner city and into the rural counties.
Oh wow! And what is the benefit of that?
More more congressmen, basically. So more representation in the elected government.
Even though they can't vote,
Even though they can't vote, their bodies count for the census.
that is
And when
crazy.
they're returned back to the inner city, they still can't vote.
You can't vote if you have a criminal record.
No.
Are you looking then to one day get a pardon? Do you think you'll ever get one?
Um, it's possible, um, like way in the future. I'm not going to say never. But my goal is, and I do believe at some point in the state of Texas, I will be able to vote in a federal election again.
Right.
You do get that right back. Luckily, I wasn't hit. One of the loopholes around that as well is they hit you with a big fine and restitution,
Oh.
and you can't vote until you pay that restitution.
Oh. Really?
So if I were to have been hit with that, you know what I mean? I wasn't their target demographic for removing me from the voter field. Um, but what they do in states like Florida, where it is legal for felons to vote, is they also make sure that they're constantly paying off a restitution for the rest of their life.
Yeah. That's another thing. That's a and the way that money is injected into the justice system is always in the wrong way.
Right.
Always. One thing that I just want to pivot for a second because one thing because I just watched the first hour of the movie and I did not know, and this seems very strange to me because of the work that you did, that Fox News was always playing in your office, and you guys are like intelligence officers. That seems like such a juxtaposition. Was everyone there kind of like, did they share the politics of that news program, or was it one manager or supervisor that really liked it and everyone else was shit out of luck? Like, how did that work?
Hey, that was like the biggest mystery when I showed up there, because there's two TVs side by side and both are always on Fox. And I liked to get in super early in the morning and have the office to myself and work. That way I could spend like 3 hours at the gym after work. I was just really into my afternoon training sessions. And I just couldn't, like, the people around me would just blot it out. But my stupid desk was facing the fucking TV screen. And it was just so bad all the time. And there was what I called the brown people crime hour between 7 and 8 a.m.,
Oh
where
wow.
they would go over, and none of these crimes were related. It was anywhere in the country, New York, California, Washington State, Louisiana, did not matter, as long as the defendant was brown or black. There
Yeah.
was never like a white person charged with breaking into a 7-Eleven.
Why didn't
It
so
was,
they didn't
and
cover news in Florida? Just
yeah,
kidding.
exactly. But it was every single morning, like Monday through Thursday, 7 a.m. to 8 a.m., just an hour of footage from I think somebody had to stay up all night and just hoover local news footage and only only have minorities for a straight, it felt very 1984, very Orwellian, very 2 minutes of hate,
Yeah.
except it's an hour. Like they took 1984 and like, oh, we could do that for an hour. Um, and I was just like, I don't understand how Fox News is getting away with this, but I don't understand how we're sitting here in a federal building with this playing every morning. And I mean, I literally, I had written to HR and I was just like, I don't want to see this. This is uncomfortable. Can we have something that's not political, or can
You
we
said
just have no
you
TV?
suggested a slideshow of pets, right?
I did. I suggested a pet slideshow.
That's amazing.
I said anything but this, and
Yeah.
um, just never. I mean, they never did anything with it. So, but the good part was that it was on mute, and a lot
That
of the
is the best thing
guys,
you can hope for when Fox News is on the screen.
a lot
Yes.
of the guys would do bad voiceovers of anytime somebody from Congress would come on and be interviewed.
Yeah.
They would do bad voiceovers.
Well, then now it has value.
Yeah, yeah. So it was kind of like everybody was laughing at it, but I was also like deeply disturbed by it constantly.
When you look at what your job used to be, and you look at other people, and I know you don't put yourself in the same box as an Edward Snowden or what's the other one? Who's the kid from the trans woman? What's her name
Oh,
again?
Chelsea.
Chelsea Manning. Um, yours was not even close to the level of cachet that they put out or whatever. But I'm wondering how you view the and then there was that last one where they leaked all that where that guy leaked all those documents via that website. He was like 19 or something, and it had a lot to do
Oh
with
yeah.
Ukraine security. Why is it so easy to excuse me for mid-level people, right? Because that's pretty much what you were, I believe, right? To access such a large quantity of classified documents, and then seemingly it seems easy to sort of take it out of the office, like the Chelsea Manning one, and the Edward Snowden one seemed a little bit more like, okay, this guy seems to be super high level smart, and so he's dealing with a lot of these programs, and so I understand that. Chelsea Manning, not so much. The last guy that leaked all those documents, I forget his name again. I can tell I do a lot of research before I start these shows, but I why is it so easy to access, and why is it so easy to then disseminate?
Yeah. So there's two main problems going on with the access of information, and the first one is after 9/11. Um, not only did we increase the number of people working in the intelligence community, but also increase sharing across the agencies. Because before 9/11, all the different agencies had their own pieces of the puzzle, and they never put them together. They weren't sharing information. They were all competing against each other. And that's why we missed it. So
Yeah,
now all the agencies share everything all the time, and everybody within their clearance kind of has access to everything all the time because they want it to be a lot more cohesive and they want to make sure they don't miss anything again. So that's the positive, and that's why you have anybody like me who had a top secret SCI clearance with so much access to things outside my job. Now, I didn't have access to everything. There are different, like, kind of like the link you sent me to come into the studio today, right? Like, you had to give me that. Nobody else could have just Googled how to get here where we're talking.
right. Okay.
So you have a lot of that going on. And, you have a lot of just restricted access, but you need to be added on to do your job, which means that anytime somebody new joins the team, it's a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
So they tend to just give, like, if you're coming on and it's so disorganized that, like, you can walk into an office and they're like, we don't know what you're going to work on yet. So let me give you access to everything,
Yeah. That's crazy.
you know?
That's,
And then when it comes to things like the particular document I leaked, everybody had access to that document. That was not secured. I mean, it was top secret, but everybody, it didn't matter what your job was. Everybody could see it.
There's also something about the classification system itself, right? Like I remember this is hilarious because it was Jesse Ventura, but it was like 2003 or 2004 when he was talking about how they'll classify anything now. They'll put some of the most innocuous documents are now classified,
Mhm.
and so you have millions and millions and millions of classified documents. And someone told me, and I don't know if this is true. You might have a better grasp on this than I do, obviously, but it was almost intended to make people even more afraid to leak documents because
Yes,
everything's classified.
absolutely. Oh yeah, my I had an email with my NSA email address printed on it to tell me how to log into my agency email for the first time. And I never even left the building. I took it down, and Starbucks was just outside the turnstiles. The guy checked my folder, said, "You're good to go." Went and got, an iced Americano, came back through the turnstiles. So
Shout
the
out to the
same
Starbucks.
guy,
Yeah.
yeah, made eye contact with this guy. And he's like, "Hey, can I see your folder?" Hand him my folder, and it's the same email he cleared the first time. He was like, "Oh no, this is a major security infraction. You need to go to HR." So I got written up on my second day on the job, and all it was my freaking email.
Yeah, I think I saw that scene just in the movie just now before I started talking to you when they were the FBI. So the movie that reality hasn't seen, I totally understand why. Am I allowed to talk about it a little bit?
Yeah, you can talk about it.
Okay. Um, I don't know if it is the whole movie is like this, but for the first hour at least, it is the story of when the FBI knocks on her car window and then the sort of like search of her home and then the questions that they ask her in her back room of her house. And it's all taken verbatim from the recording that the FBI made while they were doing this. And it was interesting because they were asking you questions about documents, and you cited that story as one of the examples. That was like the. I kind of think you were trying to throw them off the trail a little bit at that point, right? But like, they were asking about if you've ever like taken documents out, and you're like, yeah, I did. I went to. I think you even said I went to Starbucks, and they came back, and they were like, and then they filed the report, and then that was it. And that's actually probably a good use of that I don't think they should have suspended you or arrested you or anything like that because there's a lot of examples, especially in the FBI, mind you, of classified material getting out accidentally. There was that Frontline documentary, I think it was called The Man Who Knew Too Much or something like that. It was about the FBI agent from New York who led the office that was trying to catch bin Laden before 9/11, and he went to a conference and left his briefcase in the conference room or in a cab or something like that. He got it back, but he still got fired because that's how serious they are, about that kind of stuff. But, it really, I think the United States of secrets is really kind of it's its own organism now, and there's so much surveillance. Has any of that surveillance, by the way, that Snowden uncovered, has any of that stopped?
Oh, I wouldn't know. That was actually just something that um, I never even concerned myself with. I didn't know what Snowden had leaked until I was in prison
Mm.
because, again, the fear, like when his whole affair was going on, they would put out different article names in the Washington Post that you weren't allowed to look up outside of work
Oh,
because it referenced classified information that wasn't cleared. So when you pulled it up on your phone, you were then accessing classified information outside of
wow.
work on an unclear device, and you were now in violation. And
Yeah.
even if you closed your browser or used incognito, it would forever be in your hard drive of your phone or computer, and they could always get you. So we
And
never
that
read anything about Snowden. I didn't know anything about him.
and that was only for people that worked in intelligence that rule applied, like it didn't apply to regular Joes or whatever.
Exactly. Yep.
You can totally. You are so built, like you are so in shape. I am so jealous of you right now. I really am. You're a personal trainer as well, aren't you?
Yes.
Did you do that in prison with the other girls, with the other late women? Sorry.
Yes. I actually, once I arrived at Carswell, I made it my mission to take over recreation. It took about 7, 8 months, but I did it and taught almost all the classes there. I called the shots on who could be an instructor. And then I did some personal training and nutrition plans on the side.
That was the one part of the movie that I thought was not like she's a good actress, but she ain't built like you. She's too little.
Yeah.
She's too slight. Like she's like, I bench 180, and I'm like, no, you don't.
That, I mean, not to like talk about like body image and stuff like that, but being told like it's going to be really hard to find an actress willing to gain weight. I'm just really happy that Sydney was willing to take the role.
And did she shadow you like for a while? Did you guys hang out so she could sort of find your character and find her truth when she played you?
We actually spent several sessions on Zoom. It's just I was sandwiched between two projects of hers, and coming to Texas was not something that was going to happen. But we spent several nights on Zoom just talking about cats and stuff.
Is this talking about cats?
Yeah.
See,
She
that's
wanted a
another.
cat at the time, and now we both have dogs. So
You love animals so much. Every time I see a clip of you, you're like feeding chickens and playing with dogs and cats and all this other stuff. Do you live on a farm? Is it like where are you right now?
we are in South Texas. We are almost a ranch. We've got 20 acres, 6 dogs, 3 cats, 4 chickens, a horse, and a tortoise.
What's the tortoise's name? I'm dying to know for
Crack.
some reason. Pardon?
His name is Crack.
Cruck?
Crack. Because he had a crack in him.
Oh,
And he runs around like he's on crack. Like, I mean, he's crazy.
it's like the
That thing is
world's.
fast.
He's the world's only fast tortoise. Um, and so now that I want to talk about the Nipsey tattoo. So the last time we had you on, you talked about a tattoo that was inspired by 50 Cent or something like that. I don't remember exactly that story. And then you messaged me later and you're like, I got to tell you the story about the Nipsey tattoo. So this is part, and by the way, we sort of segued into that because there was like, you were talking about prison culture and how like you made friends when you were there and like, it was that was sort of the bright spot of being there was like the friendships that you fostered between yourself and the other inmates. So how did the Nipsey tattoo come about?
Yeah. So I'd always really liked Nipsey Hussle. I always felt like I cared for like what he was about and how he always tried to lift up the community around him. And we just remember like everybody in my unit knew the day he got shot.
Yeah.
Everybody knew. And not long after that, one of my friends, Matt, actually sent me, I still have it. It's a scrapbook journal. So you scrapbook instead of write how you feel, you show.
Oh, cool.
And it was with a quote from Nipsey. And so I had like a Nipsey Hussle journal. And he had the word prolific tattooed on his face, like right under his eye. And during COVID, when everybody was losing their minds and getting tattoos and just going insane, I made plans to get prolific tattooed. And so we can get into more of the drama, but like this is like it's about as prison as going to get. Me and my friend City Girl, she was in the bunk below me. We were going to get it together, matching. Well, then a rumor went around that the girl, she lived in the next cell over, that was going to do it because she did really good the poke and stick with the needle, that she was a sex offender.
Oh.
And I said, fuck that. I'm not going. No, I'm not going to get this. Like, she wasn't, by the way. That was never confirmed. But I just was like, no. And then I was arguing with City over something else. And I was just like, I'm going to do it myself. So then I started it, and it's on my thigh. And it's kind of like I had the journal. So I was trying to get the font just right because it's like a weird font. And the first time it didn't take well. And the second time it almost took well. And then the third time when I had another friend, when I had Lolo tattoo my other thigh, I was like, hey, can you go over it? And so she tried with her gun. And so she actually had a gun, but the needle we were using was actually a bread tie, and it wasn't strong enough to go through like the scar tissue that had built up.
Oh,
from
really?
it being like the third time I've been trying in this one spot. So
Are you
yeah,
sure it
when I
wasn't
got
just your mighty thighs from being a personal trainer?
probably, yeah. But yeah, so when I got home, I got a tattoo gun and I cleaned it up a bit. But yeah, it took 4 or 5 tries with this stupid tattoo.
I know that you like to draw. I saw that like, you have like you draw your cat a lot, I think, or used to. Anyways,
Yes.
this I'm all getting from the movie. Are you? I think you would make a ton of money if I ever went to Texas and you were there and you allowed it. I would be like, I'm gonna go get Reality Winner to give me a tattoo, even if you're
Absolutely.
not that
I
good at
have
it.
all the equipment. I'm very clean. I have a light hand.
Okay, done. Next time I go to Houston, I'll figure it out. You can tattoo me. We'll be a great podcast. I don't even want a tattoo. I just want Reality Winner to give me a tattoo. That's just the way. We'll get prolific on my thigh, and it will go through nice and easy because I don't work out. So, great. Um, Tell me about the book.
Yes. So, man, we worked on that thing for like 3 years. Um, my memoir just got submitted to the NSA because I have a lifelong non-disclosure.
Yeah,
So we're definitely not trying to put out any classified information. And it's just going to be my life from being born up until age 32.
yeah,
And, you know, the full story, I'm ready to just put this down. And, it's kind of my response. It's to everything that had happened. And it's also almost trying to render myself irrelevant, right? Because I mean, people are going to, when we do the book release, people are going to have questions. But once it's available for people to read, it can just be kind of like you know, I told the full story and we're not going to keep digging that back up. So
yeah.
it's
Like,
my way of just fading away.
so you'll do like a little bit of book media, and then that'll be it. You'll shut the door to that chapter of your life and move forward tattooing Canadian podcasters. Is that the idea?
Yes, absolutely. That's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to rebrand myself.
Yeah. I understand what that must feel like. At least I can conceptualize what it must feel like to have to rehash the same story over and over again. It's just that it's such a big story. And it came at a time when politics was becoming more and more, I don't want to say popular, but like more and more people were thinking about politics at that time. They were thinking about that exact issue. And then the fact that they threw the book at you in a way that no one's ever seen before, it was almost impossible to like, like you're I know this is gonna sound crazy, and I'm not trying to embarrass you or overstate it, but you are a historical figure now. Like you are in the history books as a person who went through all that. And I think it's really impressive what you've been able to do. Like it sounds like, if I recall from our first conversation, it was pretty dark for you when you first went into prison, but then you made it a better experience as the years went by. And I think that you seem to have that within you, to be able to sort of like try to make the best out of the situation that you're in. And I think I take my hat off to you for that. And is that something that you had to learn, or was that always something like a part of your personality makeup?
Um,
Or am I
I
totally wrong?
think, no, I think my personality type is just inherently disgruntled and dissatisfied. So, you know what I mean? Like I had everything. I just remember like the 6 months before my arrest. Like, I mean, it wasn't perfect, but it was pretty good. And I was just really unhappy at that time. And then it was like, well, I got out of the Air Force because I was unhappy in the Air Force. And, just at different points in my time, just constantly being just inherently unhappy or dissatisfied with the state of things, but then finding bright spots within that. And I think that's why I was trying so hard to go into these various crises as a career. That's why I
Yeah.
threw myself into such an unhappy job, or I was trying so hard to get closer to the war in Afghanistan by going to Bagram. It was just because it was like, well, here I am in Augusta, Georgia, and my biggest concern is making it to my spin class and hot yoga. And, I have all this disposable income and I love my cat. And you know what I mean? Like, um, and I was just so unhappy. So I was just like, well, let me like put myself in a complete, shithole situation. And the level of unhappiness isn't that much lower. There's different challenges.
Yeah.
But there's the same sort of finding the equilibrium and the bright spots as when you have everything at your disposal. You know what I mean? So it's not really like the best answer I have, but it's just
I
I
think
can be
that's
unhappy in really good situations, or I can be really happy in really poor situations.
I think that's a survival skill.
Oh,
You know,
definitely.
and I was wondering, do you have any like, are there any like haters that you have, like, or because people generally, when I look at your Twitter, which is usually like the uh the apex of all things shitty, like you don't seem to have a lot of hate. Is that, am I accurate, or am I correct in thinking that you have a lot more support than you do detractors?
I mean, all haters are promptly removed and deleted from life.
Oh,
No,
okay.
I'm just kidding. But no, I think that the people who throw like the most hate are either just fake accounts or they don't actually have the facts of the case, and some of them just can't, don't have the cognitive ability for the facts of the case anyway.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it took 7, 8 years to get here. But what I kind of assumed when I first released the document is when people hear all the facts, they're going to say, oh, yeah, that was a violation, but this wasn't evil. This wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
And it's taken, 3 movies, a documentary and 2 feature films, and a lot of press and a lot of coming out and being honest and open about the situation to kind of get that message out there. It was like, no, I'm not trying to take down the government. I'm not a spy.
Yeah.
Um, and you'd
They
have to
seem
be
to.
pretty dishonest with yourself or cognitively impaired.
Yeah, right. No, exactly. And there seemed, at the time, there was an emphasis on the languages that you spoke, even though that had nothing to do with the document that you released. And that Fox News, let's just smash these two things together because they both sound nefarious, kind of thing. And I always thought that was kind of bullshit, like, just because you speak, what do you speak? Pashtun, Farsi, and Dari, I think. How do you say that last one?
Yes.
Yeah. And first of all, that means you're really smart, right? That doesn't mean anything other than the fact that you're really smart. Are you able to use those, like that trilingualism or whatever, to for employment opportunities outside of government? Like, is there much that you can do with that? NGOs maybe, or something like that?
So back when I was fresh and naive in the fall of 2016, I had 3 months left in the Air Force, and I was trying to become a translator for the Red Cross. I wanted to help refugees find their families. And I did not understand that something had happened, in the early 2000s and then going into the 20 teens, that humanitarian aid is very much like pay to play.
Oh,
And they all required like the entry level jobs were like a master's degree minimum, years of work experience that my 6 years in the Air Force didn't, and you had to be able to self-sustain yourself for a year in country to do an internship.
wow.
And I was just like, yeah, you know what I mean? I looked everywhere to be a translator for anybody, anywhere other than the United States government, or even look just to, like, I remember telling my sister, like, I need 6 more years of college to pass out blankets at a refugee camp. Um, it was just my military resume meant zero. Which is why I just turned around and got a contracting gig doing the same thing I was doing, just as a civilian, because I just hoped, well, maybe as a contractor, I could find some lateral promotions and career progression to getting a year overseas to come back to the Red Cross and say, hey, I worked there for a year. And just what I learned now, that wouldn't have worked either, that these humanitarian aid organizations aren't like taking anybody. It was just devastating to find out that these language skills were not as sought after in the civilian world as I had thought.
Well, listen, I think that's their loss. I find you to be quite a compelling person. And like I said, I think you are a historical figure. Hopefully the book will be out later on this year. Reality Winner, thank you so much for joining us. I really, really, really appreciate your time. And hopefully you can come back sometime when the book comes out.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
You're welcome. You have a great day.
You too.
Bye. Reality Winner. She's really compelling. I really like her a lot. You can tell that she's not like, the most fond of being like the media, being in the spotlight, let's just say. But that's going to be her life probably for the foreseeable future. I understand why she's going to take a step back after this book comes out, and I think it's probably a good idea for her. But it's always a pleasure to have her on. I have no more interviews scheduled for this week, but I have a couple big ones coming up next week, and I think you're going to be a little bit surprised as who I have as a guest. And we'll see you on Casual Friday. And until next time, I'm James. We'll see you next time on Blackballed. Bye.
Blackballed. 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 Blackballed.